Hello, everyone. Welcome again. I hope you're all doing well wherever you are, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Dara Jagade, Communications Manager at MIDiA Research. As the title suggests, today we're focusing on the AVOD market and where it is heading. We will present our latest insights and host a discussion with our distinguished guests from Rakuten TV, XUMO and Pluto TV, who you will hear from a little bit later on in the program. If you do have any questions throughout the program for our panelists, please use the Q&A chat box to send them those questions. And of course, the presentation from today will be available on our website. Look out for a follow-up email from myself on how to get access to that. So let's get started with today's program. I'll hand over to Tim Mulligan.
Thank you, Dara. So hello everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon to talk about a fascinating topic that really we should be allowing a lot more than 1 hour for. But unfortunately, due to the constraints of webinars, we're going to pack in as much as we can into this session. So I'm going to start by presenting how MIDiA views the AVOD market as it is now and where we believe it's going to go. And then we have a highly qualified panel to discuss some of the aspects of MIDiA's insights into this space, but then also to talk more generally about what's going on in the AVOD market and what their learnings are and where they believe the opportunities lie for continued growth in a undoubtedly fast-moving and exciting part of the video environment. So I'm going to start by highlighting the specific areas that I'm going to focus on. So the presentation is how does AVOD unlock the mainstream? So there's 4 key areas I'm going to focus on here. So first of all, the AVOD audience demographics, where AVOD subscribers are now, where AVOD users are now. And then I'm going to tie that into where the current TV ad market is from one very specific demographic impact. I'm going to tie that together with the latest developments in streaming demographics to get an understanding of what the mainstream AVOD opportunity is as MIDiA sees it in its current landscape. And I'm sure we will have lots of stress testing of these assumptions when we have our panel discussing the topic afterwards. So let's look first of all at current AVOD audience demographics. So what I've done here is I've taken a snapshot of 2 key constituencies in the AVOD environment from a perspective of where AVOD is positioned now, but also a perspective of what ideally it will supersede going forwards. So on the one hand, we have the weekly active user breakdown for Tubi TV consumers in the US in the first quarter of this year. And then we have the same breakdown for linear TV weekly active users in the US. Now, the key areas to stand out here when we look at the age distribution is the youth focus, the youth skew of the Tubi TV weekly active users versus the far more mature, older demographic breakdown of linear TV. And what's striking with linear TV is nearly half of those of weekly active users of linear TV are 55 plus, so 46% are in the oldest demographic which MIDiA tracks. And with Tubi TV, obviously it's the much lowest age group, around 25 to 34, making up a third of the age demographics. So that's the first thing to note. Currently, AVOD is serving younger demographics versus the older demographics who make up the mainstream of the TV advertising audience segments. And then if we drill down into income demographics, we'll notice that the linear TV audience is an increasingly valuable audience for mainstream advertisers, which helps to justify the high premiums charge for the ability to advertise directly to this audience. Whereas Tubi TV weekly active users, they actually tend to under-index for income distribution. And we see this regularly with early adopter behavior for new digital behavior, which the young, digitally savvy users who are going for specific use cases as to why they engage. And one correlation here for the under-indexing for income of Tubi TV weekly active users is they are primarily attracted to the subscription-free model, the ability to engage in premium TV content on demand without having to pay a subscription fee for it. Now, overall, the US AVOD landscape is on a healthy upward trajectory. So here we're tracking the three leading AVOD services in the US for the first quarter, from first quarter 2020 to first quarter of this year. And we can see there is an overall trajectory of growth. However, among other services which we track in the digital environment, all the AVOD services remain niche. Now, by niche, we mean that the weekly active user engagement is around about 10%, 10% more or less, slightly above, slightly below in some cases. And that contrasts what we describe as mainstream consumer engagement, where we have 50 plus engagement. So the likes of Netflix would be a 50 plus weekly active user engagement point. So thus far, we're seeing a picture of early adopters engaging with AVOD, and it's still being, as MIDiA defines, a niche consumer activity. Now, just to emphasize this, there's a high level of digital sophistication around weekly active users in AVOD services in the US. Now, the upside of that is there's increasing ability to monetize them because they're familiar and comfortable with digital monetization. But the downside is they're also more comfortable with the likes of piracy, for example. So it's a mixed message around who these users are. But the key takeaway is they're young, digitally savvy, and the correlation is they are primarily engaging with AVOD because there's not a subscription fee attached to being able to access premium on-demand content. Now, let's build this up to the state of linear TV advertising now. Again, a huge subject, and I've got one slide to give you a key takeaway as to why it matters for today's talk. So, look at this statistic here. Over half of the demographics, so half of consumers in the US in Q1 disengage from TV advertising. When linear TV advertising comes on, they actively disengage. And who are the segment that disengages at the highest frequency? It's the 55 pluses. Now, if you remember in my earlier slide, 46% of weekly active users of linear TV are 55 plus. So this is providing a data point to match that famous adage by Joe Wanamaker that 50% of his ad spend was wasted and he just didn't know which was the 50%. Well, here we can see there are some data points to indicate the disconnect between the reputation and the pricing that TV advertising commands versus the actual effectiveness of the advertising for the core constituents who, again, in the earlier slide, we'll see that the linear TV audiences are the ones who have a high above average disposable income profile. So let's then move on to the streaming demographic shifts, and we can look at a fascinating development here that has the ability to catalyze where AVOD is now into a mainstream proposition that also helps fulfill a number of the key challenges that advertisers are facing trying to reach digital audiences. So, first of all, to reiterate, the 55 pluses they are not immune to the overall trend towards streaming. Now, MIDiA has defined the 55 pluses who are moving into streaming as the silver streamers, because they are wholeheartedly moving into this space and adopting what was previously digital native behavior. So an example of this would be for the first quarter of this year and the fourth quarter of last year in the US, the biggest single demographic for binge viewing was jointly the 55 pluses and the 30 to 34-year-olds. So they are becoming increasingly active, engaged part of the streaming landscape. Much of this is to do with this 12% increase in entertainment time that MIDiA has identified as being activated by the imposition of lockdown over the previous 12 months to fight the global pandemic. But it's also a recognition of the overall shift in the priorities of the leading communications, tech majors, and media majors towards a direct-to-consumer proposition. So they're actively pushing their traditional TV audiences towards streaming alternatives. Now, all this builds up to what the mainstream AVOD opportunity is as MIDiA sees it. So the good news is, whereas the 55 pluses who make up the core of the linear TV audience are disproportionately likely to disengage from TV advertising, they are far less likely to disengage from video advertising. In fact, of all the demographics we track, they are the least likely to disengage. So right here we have a real USP around the role of 55 pluses to be part of the catalyst towards increasing engagement for video advertising in AVOD. Now, we don't know how much this is just a inevitable recognition of the relative novelty of streaming for 55 pluses. So are silver streamers more tolerant of video ads because they are less familiar with digital ad saturation the way that younger audiences are? Or is it the fact that they are just more attuned to the integral role of advertising in a TV-like experience? Right now, we don't know definitively either way, but what we do know is that there is an opportunity to capitalize upon this ad tolerance to be able to build out a compelling digital ad proposition which fulfills the needs of both the consumers to access content without directly paying for it, but also the advertisers to be able to reach increasingly digital-first audiences. Now, just to underline the opportunity here about how the 55 pluses are so integral to understanding the opportunities with the demographic evolution of streaming, we can see here how the 55 pluses, the silver streamers, are the ones who are currently a significant problem for traditional TV advertising and currently part of the solution for AVOD. And if we think about the role of AVOD being able to introduce measurement, clearly defined measurement as a USP for working with advertisers, that challenge of not being able to track where reach is failing with conversion in broadcast linear TV is obviously something that can be solved and is addressable and trackable in forensic detail in AVOD. Again, just to reiterate how the both linear TV viewers and silver streamers over-index for positive ad engagement. So they over-index for not skipping relevant advertising. So we've got a number of points of evidence building up here to how silver streamers are actually disproportionately valuable from the point of view of AVOD overall engagement, tolerance of advertising, and opportunities to be able to partner with advertisers to be able to maintain a relationship with that valuable 55 plus demographic who would otherwise be churning out because they're leaving or disconnecting with linear TV. Now, here's the other key aspect of AVOD's opportunity to grow as a mainstream proposition. Now, we know that the early adopters of AVOD are digitally savvy, younger. We also know, or we think we know, there's a correlation that they are almost certainly engaging with AVOD disproportionately because there isn't a subscription fee involved. Now, what that indicates is there is an increased willingness of digital natives to engage with AVOD for a clear trade-off, for a clear beneficial transaction. Now, one of the ways that SVOD has become so successful since the 2007 pivot by Netflix into on-demand video was the ability to have zeitgeisty exclusive content, compelling pull proposition for digital consumers. The same thing absolutely applies to AVOD, and we're already seeing that with some savvy licensing and content commissioning strategies from the more innovative AVOD services. Now, it matters because if you look at the overlaps here for these leading forms of digital media engagement, at least half these destinations are ad-free destinations where these digitally savvy consumers are behind paywalls where they can't be reached by traditional advertising. AVOD has the opportunities to bring them back into the fold where they then become part of the reach opportunity for advertising. So we've got two strands here building up. Silver streamers coming in who are disengaged with TV advertising, potentially coming back into a TV advertising proposition via AVOD and being more tolerant, certainly for now, of the advertising experience. And then we have digital natives who have really shown a willingness to engage with AVOD on a pure transactional basis, but who we can start building a relationship around the type of content that's there, but also the sophistication of the kind of advertising that is introduced into that space. And by sophistication, I mean things like what HBO Max are doing with understanding where to place ads, aspects such as creating digitally native advertising around what IX has done in the past, for example. There are multiple opportunities to make a digital ad proposition that is led by AVOD a premium experience. They're not just can retain existing TV consumers, but it can actually grow the reach of the advertising possibility of the wider digital landscape. So, conclusions. AVOD is now poised to break out of its current niche status. And again, just to emphasize, by niche, we mean around about 10% more or less. Where it has the potential to go to is broadcast TV, which is 50+ % weekly active user engagement. And that's where SVOD is now. And it can do this by empowering advertisers to reach those, the core of the linear TV audience who are now migrating to streaming, the silver streamers, and also using digitally savvy, digitally native advertising and compelling original content that will attract and retain younger digital audiences. And so, with that, we're going to go on to our panel. And so I would like to allow each of the panelists to introduce themselves. First of all, I'd like to welcome Jacinto Roca, the CEO and founder of Rakuten TV. Jacinto, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. First of all, thank you very much, Tim, for inviting me to this panel. The founder of Rakuten TV. Rakuten TV is a video service present in Europe since 2010, across 43 countries, mainly focused on smart TVs. Until last year, our focus was TVOD. And since last year, we also launched AVOD and FAST channels. and we are seeing a tremendous growth thanks to these new AVOD and fast channels, and happy to be here today to share experiences and ideas on how to unlock the mainstream consumer on AVOD. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacinto. Colin, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, Tim, and thanks, everybody. Colin Petrie-Norris, started XUMO TV 7 years ago. XUMO is a consumer-facing streaming TV application, 200 live or linear channels and on-demand content. But XUMO also has an enterprise offering where we've taken our technology and what we've learned, and we help empower other partners' ecosystems in live video. So the likes of Samsung, Roku TV, or the Roku channel, and many others. So have a mostly US presence, but increasingly international as well.
Thank you, Colin. And Olivier, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Hi, Tim. Good to be here. So I'm Olivier Jollet. I'm Senior Vice President, Streaming Strategy at ViacomCBS. So overseeing the streaming strategy both for our free streaming product Pluto TV and our paid streaming product Paramount Plus. But obviously, I'm coming from Pluto TV. I joined ViacomCBS 2.5 years ago when Viacom acquired Pluto TV, and I've been leading before that the international rollout of Pluto TV across Europe. Pluto TV was some good slides about it is the leading free streaming TV streaming service in across the world, live in 26 countries with more than 50 million monthly active users.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we've got a huge number of questions and the top potential areas we could go with here. Where I'd like to start with is what I alluded to in my presentation around the impact of the previous 12 months COVID. So, Jacinto, I'm going to start with you. What do you believe is different about the AVOD market now compared to the pre-COVID lockdown environment? What has changed for you at Rakuten TV as a result of this, this development over the previous 12 months?
Well, unfortunately, we see customers spending much longer hours at home, no, and therefore the viewing time on VOD services has increased. So I would say that is the most obvious consequence of the COVID-19 situation. And the other one is on the TVOD front, no, the lack of new movies being released on cinemas, which is the negative side on the business impact of this COVID situation. So I would say that COVID has accelerated the adoption of AVOD and fast services overall, unfortunately, in this case.
Okay, thank you. Colin, what's been the impact for XUMO of the COVID-19 and the Great Lockdown?
Yeah, I think as you know, it's sort of unfortunate circumstances clearly, but you know, in terms of the sort of underlying business and the consumers, you know, adoption of it, it was sort of stratospheric, frankly. You know, in the early months, the consumers were looking for a lot of new content, looking for old content. It's sort of tremendous growth, and I think what we're all looking for is as things sort of hopefully wind to an end, would that tail off? Has that sort of to decline? And actually what we're seeing is it absolutely hasn't. And what seems to have been the case is that consumers have discovered a new form of content without, looking beyond the SVOD services. These free services like ourselves have started to resonate with consumers in a way that we're seeing sort of some real habits being built around, and some. So, you know, we 6 months ago, 9 months ago, we were anticipating a decline, but that hasn't been the case. If anything, it actually still continues to grow very quickly.
Great, thank you. Olivier, what's been the impact for Pluto and for ViacomCBS more generally around the lockdown and AVOD growth?
Yeah, I would mention two things which I think have been quite fascinating. The first one is obviously the amazing growth of our user base and on the and of the watch time per users as well. Obviously, the people being stuck at home, looking for entertainment alternative, and I think they found a new home with Pluto TV, offering really a variety of channels, fulfilling all kind of tastes. So I think that's the first thing. And obviously also we're facing an economic crisis, and obviously when you're able to offer a free product, premium content, and you need to watch a couple of ads to watch this content, I think it's okay in the time of economic crisis. And the second point I want to mention is there is the pandemic has been speeding up the mentality when it comes to CTV inventory by advertisers. While the advertising market really faced some big challenges in the last months with the pandemic, we have been seeing that the advertisers have been going to CTV, to an inventory which is more measurable, more addressable than TV itself. And I think that is something which is extremely interesting, because it's probably speeding up the shift from, I would say, TV budget to more connected TV inventory budget.
Right, excellent. On that point, Olivier, I'm going to ask you a question first of all, and then ask the other panelists as well afterwards. But I'm hearing a lot about the significant increase in CPM rates that are being commanded by AVOD services in the last 12 months. How closely is this increase in the ability to monetize CPM rates on AVOD? How closely is it linked to those trends you've just identified?
Well, I think there is something which is very important, is that, the AVOD market is big. I mean, there was in your presentation a lot of actors from the social platform to the broadcaster platform and all those AVOD and fast players. When we talk about a platform such as Pluto TV or XUMO and the others, we're talking about a consumption which is mainly happening on big screen. And the advertising that you are bringing to the end users is very close to what you experience on linear television. It is full screen, it is brand safe, it is non-skippable ads, it is integrated, at least for Pluto, within a program. It's not a pre-roll. We don't have pre-roll on Pluto. It is a TV ad break in a way. But you have the ability to better target and measure your the inventory. So you are mixing the best of digital world and the best of TV, and that is something which is extremely valuable for advertisers, and therefore it creates actually a new market, a market which has been, by the way, declining because of the success of the free ad-supported, of the free streaming, of the paid streaming offerings such as Netflix. And this share of voice that has been taken from TV can be now found on the AVOD or FAST platform.
And just to follow on from that, does that mean, what you're saying, does that mean that it's possible to reduce the ad load between what an AVOD service such as Pluto is able to provide versus the more traditional linear TV, because you have that higher degree of sophistication and measurement?
The ad experience, and I guess Jacinto and Colin will say the same, is very important. I mean, you need to make the ad experience very enjoyable for the users. Find the right number of ads per hours. So at Pluto, we took the decision to have 2 to 4 minutes less ads per hour than traditional TV. So it means that you have less ads. You have the ad pace is more accepted by the end users. We have an ad fill a completion rate which is over 90% on Pluto TV, which is showing that the users are not leaving the channels when an ad break is coming. So all those KPIs are very important for advertisers and show that when you make the ad experience better, then the user is not leaving.
Okay. On this topic of the how the advertising proposition can be made to be an AVOD exclusive one that is unique compared to other alternatives. Jacinto, I know we prior to this panel conversation, we talked a little bit about how you at Rakuten TV segment your advertising opportunities market by market. Could you talk a bit more about that to help our viewers get a better understanding of how you are creating tailored advertising opportunities for your digital channels?
Sure. Our experience is that local advertising is very relevant. No? So having local ad sales team with a close contact with local brands makes a difference. And we believe that the local content as well is very relevant. No? And there is a link between the local advertisers and the local content. No? That's an easy way to target customers, taking into account the relevance of the local content and the local advertisers. And this is different by country in Europe. No? We have 43 different countries in Europe, and that makes a massive variety of types of content in the different countries and type of advertisers. And it requires content teams in the different markets and ad sales teams in the different markets. And that's maybe one of the biggest differences with the US, no? where probably the local brands and the local content are not that different from one place to another. Of course, there are some brands that they do pan-European campaigns, no? that it's also there, and there are some content that works across different European countries. But the relevance of local content and local advertisers is very relevant in Europe, based on our experience, of course.
Okay, thank you. Colin, from your privileged position at XUMO to understand the importance of working with third-party ecosystems. I know you mentioned before about how you work with the Roku channel, and the fact that your focus is the US market, which is the most sophisticated AVOD market globally at the moment. How much is what Olivier and Jacinto have talked about in more general terms about the global and certainly the European AVOD market from an advertising perspective? How much does that directly relate to what you're seeing in the ability to increase CPM rates and the need to be able to manage the ad load to be able to create a point of differentiation from traditional linear partners you may be working with?
There's a lot in that question. There's, I think how you manage ad load is the first thing is that this medium allows for a high degree of dynamism in how you approach it. There's not a preordained, you shall put in this many ads per hour on all these contents of these shows. We're able to adapt and act frankly in real time to what is working, how many ads people are tuning out, tuning in, because it's a very fluid, very controllable experience. So and that makes it a great thing for consumers, right? Because you can not only have the addressable ads or ads tailored to more to your interests, but we have also ad strategies which are suitable for the type of show you're watching. If you're watching a movie, you might have ad strategy A. If you're watching live sports, you might have ad strategy B. Now, how that works internationally is so good. We're in good shape because we can adapt to market circumstances, and maybe have a different strategy on a sports channel in Germany to a news channel in the UK. But here's the thing. Consumers react differently to linear TV and free ad-supported TV. In the US, it's more it's a new phenomenon. You know, I think consumers like, wait a minute, free TV that just comes to me, I tune into and I get it. This harkens back to the 1970s with broadcast TVs. In Europe, free-to-air broadcasters are a much more prominent or very prominent sort of force. And so consumers are more used to it. So how you manage your ads is much more important in Europe as you introduce services. And I think we've seen lower ad loads, and you can do that. It stands well for the medium. You know, I sort of work better right now in Europe as the new services people are getting used to it, and starting to adopt services like our own and Olivier's and Jacinto. So yeah, it's there's a lot there, but I think the very adaptable nature of what we do lends itself to the international market.
And Colin, building upon your previous experience working with version 1.0 of digital advertising, like sort of your AOL background, do you see the role of advertising in AVOD as a natural continuum of the increased sophistication and segmentation and targeting and enhanced overall user experience for the digital consumer? Or do you see it as predominantly a TV proposition that is now becoming digitally empowered?
Well, I say, yeah, I'm a bit of a dinosaur in terms of online advertising. Been doing it an awfully long time, starting with banner ads, punch the monkeys, those kind of things. We're not personally responsible for that, but that was the era we started off in. And it does seem that, first of all, move from display to video, or display to mobile to video, and sort of these generations of advertising and all the techniques that have been developed in targeting, measurement, are sort of almost like waiting for this moment to have the best medium, this big screen TV, no browser tabs open, sort of the mode of 50-inch high-def TVs on the wall, sound on. You couple together that experience with the engine of digital, which has been refined through all these generations of advertising. It's pretty phenomenal. It works really, really well. It drives users. You can measure them. And so I think I believe that we're at a sort of the finest moment for digital advertising right now. We've learned a lot of lessons. We are very privacy sensitive. And also the medium lends itself to being more privacy friendly for consumers, but it also has all the power of digital and the experience that drives, I think, the biggest impact for our advertisers.
Okay, thank you. Olivier, I'd like to branch this out more into the global opportunity for AVOD going forwards. And we've talked a little bit, I said in my presentation, I talked about some of the demographic drivers. We talked a little bit about where the advertising proposition sits within TV or within the digital space more generally. But the next big challenge surely is making AVOD as successfully internationally as it's now increasingly proven to be in the US. And with your background with Pluto and with rolling out Pluto in Europe, and now with your responsibilities at ViacomCBS for global rollouts of AVOD in partnership with your subscription services, what do you see as the challenges for making this a globally viable consumer proposition for AVOD?
That's a great question. It's not an easy one to answer. I mean, clearly what we see is that the US market is way more advanced than any other market internationally. It is advanced in terms of programmatic adoption. It is advanced in terms of how agencies work and considers CTV inventory in their media mix. So everything is more advanced in the US. But as you know, usually what happened in the US comes with a slight delay to Europe and other countries. And that's exactly what we see. We see, for example, the UK market really booming. The AVOD market is booming. The advertisers are keen to book that kind of inventory. The content partners are keen to really deliver more and more premium content into our channels at Pluto. So we see like really the story from the US starting to be successful across the world. We've been having like an incredible success in Latin America and Brazil with Pluto TV. And clearly the complexity when you run international is the differences in the market. So the CPM level are completely different when you are in LATAM or when you are in the US or in UK or in Poland. So, I mean, that's the first complexity. So in certain markets where you have lower CPM, it's all about scaling quicker, maybe the monthly active users to get a really high level of revenue. You have markets such as India, for example, are a super strong AVOD market already. Nobody talked that much about that, but it's Asia is one of the strongest AVOD markets. And I think so you need to adapt a little bit to the specificities of the market. But clearly what we see and has been really speeding up in the last year is the adoption of AVOD, the adoption of FAST, the adoption of programmatic, the adoption of this CTV inventory by advertisers is coming fast. Probably there is still a lot of work because when you are a new product, you need to educate the market. I mean, we are talking a lot with Jacinto. We're all facing, I think, the same challenges in explaining to clients, to advertisers, what is the value of that inventory. This job has been done in the US. You have also way more players. I mean, you have XUMO, Pluto TV, Tubi, the Roca channels, way more users from AVOD and FAST than you have in Europe. So I think that's this education piece is very important. Also important to go together, all the different competitors to explain that to the markets. And that is currently happening. And I really predict a brilliant future for AVOD and FAST, and also like a quick adoption from the advertisers for this kind of inventory that we are generating.
To put you on the spot slightly, Olivier, you scoped out this huge opportunity. Obviously, ViacomCBS are betting both on direct-to-consumer subscription, but also AVOD. Is it possible for both services to work alongside each other and complement each other? Or is there inevitably going to be cannibalization engagement from one to the other? And basically the follow-up question to that is, what does that mean? If you're someone looking at it from the outside, potentially you're an investor, or you're a consumer making a choice about where you allocate your scarce attention time, which one do you go for? And certainly, how is ViacomCBS seeing this?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and that's also what differentiates ViacomCBS to other media group. We decided to invest in a link ecosystem, which is like with a free streaming product, Pluto TV, and a paid streaming product. But we're building an ecosystem, and this ecosystem can also be seen broader with all the linear channels and all the production that we are making at ViacomCBS. But I think when we talk about the streaming ecosystem, we've been building a lot of bridges between the two platforms. As an example, we premiere the first episode of Star Trek Picard on Pluto TV, but the full season was only available on Paramount Plus, or at the time was CBS All Access. We also launched a Paramount Plus channels on Pluto TV, featuring the best of Paramount Plus. So, you know, we are like talking to different audiences. Some of them are like similar one, but having like a free streaming product and a paid streaming product allow us to have like a broader audience, to target a broader audience, and to be clearly to have a role to play in two really big markets, the paid streaming market and the free streaming market. And I think you can do an analogy with the linear TV. I mean, ViacomCBS has been successful for decades in the free TV and the paid TV business. And we want to be as successful as we are in the linear TV, in free streaming and paid streaming.
Okay, thank you. Jacinto, what you're going through at Rakuten TV in some ways, it's almost like it's like a crystallization of this bigger global piece that Olivier is talking about at ViacomCBS. Are you seeing the same challenges on a country-by-country basis across the European markets you're covering, as Olivier has talked about in the more global regional aspects of different parts of the world? And if so, what techniques are you using to educate potential advertising partners and to help educate the consumers as to the value proposition for what you're bringing to market in those countries?
So I think that one key element of our proposition is launching fast channels directly from our branded button. That emulates the laid-back type of TV viewing experience of traditional TV, and that customer behavior is one of the key success factors, in our opinion, to unlock the big market potential of traditional TV into fast channels. No? So again, this branded button and the linear viewing experience, I think it's a key success factor for that transition into the fast channels from traditional TV. Then at a local basis, like we said before, it's very important the local content, no, and the local brands in the advertising space. And for that, what we do is, again, we make sure that we have teams in the different countries, making sure that we build channels that are relevant for local audiences, and also that we bring into our platform existing channels from third-party services, no, like Pluto or others, that we can bring into our platform and distribute as well. So we don't have only our channels, but also we distribute third-party channels, and some of those are very relevant at a local basis as well. No? And something that is also very important is the CPMs. CPMs are quite different by market, no? And that is where I think it's important to make sure that you have the right balance between global and local advertisers, so you manage the right CPM levels, and then also being able to target premium CPMs by becoming a true alternative to traditional TV, no? Not to the internet, but to traditional TV, and making sure that we bring something additional like targeting and making sure that we can measure the impact of the advertising that we are doing in the platform. Those are the key success factors for the international expansion, in our opinion, Tim.
Thank you, Jacinto. Colin, one aspect that Jacinto talked about, we've briefly covered before, touched upon, but it'd be great to get a close perspective from where you sit at XUMO. How important is the connected TV space to making a success of AVOD and FAST more generally?
I think it's one of the most exciting sort of trends we see is that not only have application services, the likes of Pluto or Tubi or many others have been the sort of success across platforms. We've also seen the TV OEMs become, I think, we were one of the pioneers of this space where we took digital channels and we fused them together in the guide of the TV with LG, and had consumers being able to seamlessly move from their local broadcasters into digital channels. That is now the standard operating procedure for every TV OEM pretty much on the planet. These live experiences, when presented to consumers, drive that massive discovery. Content is dramatically increased for consumers' choices, but it's grown this market very, very quickly because these TV OEMs are at the final sort of, the whole TV ecosystem all is assembled in the glass of the TV in somebody's living room. There is sort of, that is the right between the eyeball and everything else in this ecosystem. So they're very powerful devices. And of course, people watch a lot of content on them. This is what they're there for. They're on hours a day. People, people, big surprise, people watch a lot of TV, and this is a cross-planetary phenomenon. So the smart TV manufacturers have a huge role to play in this ecosystem. They are driving adoption with their own services and the presentation of services like our own. And consumers, I've worked out with all the monthly active users in the US that are disclosed between the Plutos, Tubis, XUMOs, Crackles, and the like. Back of the envelope, more than half of US families now, probably 60 or 70%, are watching services like ours every month. This is yes, niche individually, but collectively as a group, a very popular way for consumers to watch content in the US and soon to be around the world.
Great. And this leads on to the I think the final big piece of this that we haven't yet talked in any detail about, and I referred to it in my concluding remarks, my presentation. How important is the role of compelling and exclusive content to be able to grow adoption and the value proposition? So, I mean, I'll start with you, Colin. You talked so eloquently about the connected TV space. Does it matter for fast networks such as XUMO to have exclusive zeitgeist original content to be able to compete with the Netflixes and the Paramount Pluses, etc., of the streaming world?
I see your comment, your question as well, Junko. Nice to see you there. But it's a great question. I think what we're in right now is generation 3 of free ad-supported TV in the US, and I'll speak to that for a second. Generation 1, the early players, what we did was we strung together video content, which was built for social media. It was sort of clip-based content that was trying to get clicks in Facebook. And by stitching it together into a linear stream, something magic happened, and sort of this new generation, its new type of consumption was born. Fast forward to generation, so that was all like digital brands and magazines and things that had content as the first channels. Fast forward to generation 2 was more widespread adoption by the traditional industry. We have now Hallmark channels. We have PGA Tour is doing work with us on built for OTT channels. We have sort of more movie studios that are really excited by this as a very viable, sizable sort of way for them to deliver revenues. We're now tracking towards generation 3. And that is where the services, originally it was, we had 3 million users, Pluto had 7 million or 10 million, and we all had our little pockets in the market we could go after, and we didn't really rub up against each other, frankly. Now the services are now competing. Now they've read more than half the families are watching watching the TV. It's a very viable commercial option for, it's delivering substantial revenues. And so the now generation 3 is how we distinguish each other, compete with each other for, and how do we set ourselves up as being unique. And that is going to be unique content. They're inferring eventually sort of, we'll have to get into as evidenced by Roku and others, they're commissioning of originals and something really truly differentiating. And that is going to be generation 3 and perhaps generation 4 beyond that as well. So that's I think that's where we see it on the content side.
Thanks. Jacinto, I know you have some experience of originals as part of your go-to-market strategy across Europe. What could you add to what Colin said about how significant they are for presenting the consumer proposition for AVOD?
I agree. I agree with Colin. That this is phase 3. Probably we are in phase 2 in Europe, Colin. So a bit behind you guys, but it is coming that original content will be the next chapter in AVOD and fast services as well. We do have a channel called Rakuten TV Stories, which is based mostly on original sports documentaries, which is very cool. I recommend everyone to have a look at it. And I think it's something similar as with SVOD services is what will happen in AVOD and fast, that in order to drive people to the service and keep them engaged, you will need to have some content that is attractive, it's exclusive, it's original, and that is the next chapter in the AVOD and fast industry, in our opinion, as well. But again, probably in Europe will take a bit longer because we're a bit behind what is happening in the US now. But we believe it will come as it is happening in the first in SVOD and in the US in AVOD and fast right now. Yeah.
Thanks. Olivier, I know this is something that you've been thinking a lot about, and the role of originals and content generally plays into how important you see the overall supporting ecosystem to be for making AVOD a success going forward for mainstream consumers. Could you talk a bit more about those points of focus that you're looking at for this space?
Yeah, sure. I think just want to jump on one thing that Jacinto mentioned. Indeed, I think Europe is a little bit behind in comparison to the US. For a long time, AVOD has been associated with old content, low quality content from the content provider point of view. And that is start to change because they start seeing that platforms such as Pluto TV are able to very well monetize their content and get a big check at the end of the month. And usually when you start giving a big check, then they're more open to give better content. So I think in order to really boost this AVOD industry, which is still at the beginning, and the fast industry in Europe, I mean, there is obviously, everyone needs to play a part, and the content industry has a key role to play in providing better content. And it's happening clearly, and I think the success story of AVOD is now going everywhere in every market, and obviously all the big title around the revenue generated in the US by the AVOD and fast is traveling well and open new doors by the licenses. When it comes to ViacomCBS, obviously we're one of the biggest content producer in the world. Spent more than $12 billion in production last year, and we have a strategy where we are really working on the clever windowing strategy between all the different products that we have, from linear channels to paid products, paid streaming product, and free product and free streaming product. And sometimes you have some content which fit perfectly for a more TV audience. Some of them are better for under the paywall for streaming, and some of them may be better for a free streaming audience. I mentioned the example of what we did with Star Trek Picard in the US. I think it was a great example on how to use like a free TV platform to really showcase this amazing show, create awareness, but also offer some amazing original content to our users coming from ViacomCBS. So I think clearly what Colin mentioned, the phase 3 original, yes, it will happen clearly, but we should not also underestimate the value of the library content. If you have a look at the ratings on traditional TV, the big blockbusters still make huge audience. When you have a look at the best performing show on Netflix, it is Friends. It is not an original content. So I think that is something which is important, because AVOD is also a great way to really give us a space in the streaming ecosystem to content which, due to the explosion of this original, they lost a little bit their space in the paid streaming world. Most of the paid streaming platform now original producers and not any longer aggregators. And I think this role has been taken by the AVOD and fast platform, and that's a good move. And I think even if I'm a big fan of original, I think we should not underestimate the power of library and catalog content.
Great, thank you. And like all good TV shows, we come up against the hard scheduling stop of the end of the hour. So there's so much more to talk about. Unfortunately, we don't have time, but I'm sure you agree we've covered a lot of ground, and there's been some fascinating insights come out here. I'd like to thank each of our panelists individually for joining us today. Colin, thank you very much for your insights. Jacinto, really fascinating to get your perspective on what's happening in the European market. And Olivier, great as ever to get your take on this space and get a sense of how ViacomCBS sees these emerging opportunities. And all that remains for me to do is to say thank you very much. If you haven't already signed up for the MIDiA Weekly Briefing, please go to our website and do so. You'll find lots of fascinating insights into these spaces which we're covering now. So once again, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.